Hi there. Welcome to the Imperfect Prophet podcast for women who wonder. Frankly, as we go through life, I'm sure we wonder about a great deal. First as little kids, then as adolescents, then as young women, then as transitional women. What are we calling ourselves these days? And then you get to this point in life, or my point in life, when you're postmenopausal and wondering what's next. Wondering if the parade already passed you by. Join me, Wonder Wendy. I'm going to be your host as we talk about some of these unique challenges that face women today in a new millennium, going through menopause and trying to live a rich, full life. There might even be a few men and younger women that want to listen in too. That's okay. But there's a roller coaster and we're all on it. And I'm going to be your guide to help you figure out when you should close your eyes, when you should hang on, and maybe we'll explore some ideas for what works for you if it doesn't work for me, or vice versa. So join the conversation, pick up your favorite beverage, and we'll talk to you soon. Welcome to The Imperfect Prophet.
I hope you had a chance to listen to last week's episode of The Imperfect Prophet, which was the first ever episode recorded in front of a live audience, episode of The Imperfect Prophet, that is. I want you to listen to that because when I listened to it, I got to relive the excitement and the energy that was in that room. Every person in that room found new connections, new depth of relationship. They were all very present. You could hear the murmurs. You could hear the laughter. You couldn't hear the tears, but I know they happened because I saw an occasional napkin up against an eye. It was an amazing night. And I wish you all could have been there. But even if you weren't, I think you'll get a sense of what we experienced just by listening to that recording. I know when I got home last week, after recording that episode, I was exhausted and wound up. I compared it to a toddler who is so tired they desperately need to sleep and so excited that they can't even think of sleeping. That was me. I did finally get to sleep and then woke up 2 hours later thinking about everything that happened. And I'm still thinking about it. There's so much to unpack. Please go on the Facebook group and tell me what you hear when you listen to it. And with that, I bring you to another episode of The Imperfect Prophet with me, your host, Wonder Wendy, back in my little podcasting nest here. Now, there was one thing I didn't plan on happening. Actually, I can't say that. Somewhere in my heart, I knew this was going to happen. I don't know why. I can't tell you why, but I had a feeling there would be an uninvited guest. And there was a young couple that showed up just as we started recording. So they had to stand in a corner and watch the recording from the side. And they had a stroller with a baby in it. And when they were standing there, I'm thinking, I don't know you. And I know you're not on the invite list. Maybe they just stopped by to check out Arizona Stronghold. I mean, we are in a winery that's normally open to the public. It was just closed for us that night. And oh gosh, I do remember when I was a nursing mom, the occasional half glass of wine, and I hope you have your beverage because I have mine in front of me. It's always more convivial if we're sharing a beverage. But I enjoyed the occasional half glass of wine when I was nursing because being a new mom is stressful, really stressful. And there's somebody who's living off of your body. They were living in your body. Now they're living off of your body as a nursing mom. And it's exhausting. You don't get a break. Somebody else's needs always come first. So when the little girl was winding down, mommy got a half glass of wine just to help the milk flow. I considered it a good thing. Half a glass. So anyway, sorry. This young family is there. And I'm really wondering what they're doing here. But they stay and they listen, and then they join the crowd. And as I'm working the room after we recorded the episode, and I'm trying to get to say hi to everyone in the room, I hope I didn't miss anyone, but I probably did because that's just how life is. I finally got to this young woman, and I had asked somebody else near her, "Do you know who she is?" And the answer was, "She's been listening to your podcast." Really? She can't be out of her 20s yet. So I walk up and I greet the baby because the baby's adorable, because 3-month-old babies are adorable, and start to find out her story. The baby is 3 months old, and she'd been coping with postpartum depression. Someone suggested my podcast, and she told me that it had helped her get through that postpartum depression. The messages of reinvention and rediscovery and self-care that I thought were crafted for, well, women of a certain age are resonating with other groups. I don't know. That was really inspirational to me. But it also made me think about my own experiences as a mother, because I was giving her advice specifically tailored to her, not just to you, my listeners, that I have a certain mental image of who you are and what you might want to hear from my stories that might help you. And I reminded her that that man over there that brought her here today, hopefully in 20 years, he'll still be with her. But if she's done her job well, that beautiful little baby girl is going to be an independent adult, at least a somewhat independent adult. I think we still check in with our moms as long as we have them. Either way, I assured her that she should remember to make time to nurture her relationship with her husband and with herself. Because what kind of a role model is she to her daughter if she's all about self-sacrifice? So love your daughter, love your spouse, and love yourself. And that comes from a very personal place. Now, I've had 4 pregnancies in my life. The last one was almost 24 years ago. The first 2 were not successful outcomes. We had funerals instead of bringing home a baby from the hospital. So, well, I never truly had postpartum depression as it is diagnosed these days. I know something about the emotional roller coaster of having your body prepared to give birth and then suffering tragedy and looking for the strength to rebuild yourself, to try again, to dare to try again, and then to have that happen a second time. That's really hard. And it's not just the physical, I lost a pregnancy. It's not just the physical, my baby didn't live. It's you have hormones coursing through your body when you give birth that are designed to set you up for parenting, but at the same time, they make you feel a little bit insane. As a woman, I guess we go through a lot of phases where our hormones really mess with us. You know, first teenagers, and then having menstruation and mood swings, and pregnancy and mood swings, and menopause and mood swings. And then they tell us we're crazy when we're old, but being postmenopausal is kind of glorious. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'll go back to pregnancy. I know that feeling. And when I finally did have a child that lived and I took her home from the hospital, I would sit there and count her little toes over and over and over again, marveling that it had worked this time and living in fear of it going wrong. I remember a couple times making her dad, my husband, crawl quietly into the nursery to make sure she was still breathing because I couldn't go to sleep till I knew. It's really hard. And then this person is entirely reliant on you, or at least it feels that way. But hopefully you have a support network that you will trust with your child, that you can say, will you hold the baby for a little bit while I take a bath? Will you hold the baby for a little bit while I take a nap? Will you hold the baby for a little bit while I have this half glass of wine? Cultivate those relationships because they'll help. And it'll help you be sane. And it'll help your child be sane. Because being all about your child isn't healthy for either one of you. Like I said, your job is to teach them to be independent, that they don't need you to walk across the floor, that they can do that. You might have to help them, and occasionally you have to pick them back up again. But you're there to help them be independent. Your body changes. You lose your identity for a little while. You wonder if you're ever going to be normal again. And if you happen to be in that boat right now, I can assure you, you probably will be okay. It's just going to take a little while. Now, I've talked a lot about fear on this podcast because fear is that thing that keeps you from achieving your potential. It gets in the way. I even talked about the fear of whether the child's going to be okay, how hard it is to love and trust and be secure. That's where the backside of fear comes in. It's courage. And I think I've used that word before, but I've never really focused upon it. And I want you to focus on the fact that you are capable of courage. You're capable of the courage of asking for help, carving out time for self-care, and reclaiming identity. It's a new normal, but isn't most of life a new normal? Would you really want life to be the same from cradle to grave? I don't think so. If you do think so, you're probably not a bucket lister and you're probably not listening to this podcast. Now, when I think of courage, my brain naturally goes to the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. Now, the Cowardly Lion had obviously been traumatized by something and had a lot of reasons to be afraid. But in the end, he was able to rise above and exemplify courage, not because he was intending to be a hero, not because he was the bravest person in the room, but because the lion knew that his friends needed him. And he needed to muster up his courage to save himself and his friends. And in the end, he got that lovely medal from the wizard that simply said, courage. Courage. And having that recognized in himself, he realized it had been there all along. That's what I want you to do for yourself. That's what I'm giving you permission to do today. To recognize your personal courage, that you faced so many things in your life, so very many things in your life. What was the line last week? It doesn't matter if you fail. You've already changed the world. Courage doesn't necessarily mean success. It means you tried. So it's not about necessarily the epic hero's journey. It's about trying. It's about having the confidence in yourself to do what is right. Now, the person I think of when I tell that narrative is Rosa Parks. You remember the story, Rosa Parks, long day at work, and the only seat available on the bus was in the white section. So she sat down. Now, I wish I could tell you it was really that simple. but it wasn't. 9 months prior to Rosa Parks' act of bravery, a 15-year-old girl by the name of Claudette Colvin, also in Montgomery, Alabama, had taken a seat in the white section. 15-year-old teenager. Now, when the police came to enforce the laws that were accepted in our culture at that time, she mouthed off. She was charged with a whole bunch of things, none of which was actually sitting in the white section. She was charged with resisting arrest, with disorderly conduct, and I think a few other things. And ended up with a criminal record as a direct result. The NAACP knew they needed a better test case to test the merits of the rules that kept Black people sitting in the back of the bus. And they had encouraged Rosa to consider doing that. So it was with one day she took that seat. It was a very courageous act. But I'll bet you her knees were shaking. She didn't know what faced her. She didn't know if she'd be roughed up by the authorities. She had no idea what would happen as a direct result. She didn't know she'd end up a hero that would be memorialized on so many things over the next half century and more. We still talk about her today. She was what we call a test case. Now, why am I telling you about a test case? I'm no constitutional lawyer, but I can tell you that a test case is part of the way that everyday people help change the laws of our land. When an unjust law is in place, we need to find someone who exemplifies the purest form of why that law is wrong. So it can go through the court systems and be reviewed by the Supreme Court and change the laws of our land. And that's exactly what Rosa Parks was. She was a test case that forwarded the injustice of putting people in a different section of the bus just because they were of a different color. There have been other test cases, so many actually, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg had a test case in her younger law career before she was on the Supreme Court. And she found a man who was the victim of a pay inequity. And that went all the way to the Supreme Court and changed the laws that have allowed women to work towards pay equity. For so many years, women in equal paying jobs have been discriminated against. And now there are laws on our side as a direct result of her initiatives. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit. In 2021, I was driving through Alabama. A friend and I took a road trip. It was quite the little lark. 2021, the world was still kind of opening up again after COVID. And a lot of the historic landmarks in Montgomery weren't open at that point in time. But we went to the visitor center. And I'd heard something about Claudette Colvin's story. But it was kind of not a historical source, so I wasn't sure. I asked the tour guide at the historical center. I heard there was a young woman who was arrested before Rosa Parks. And the tour guide was very proud to tell me that Claudette Colvin was her cousin. Even better, only 2 weeks earlier, Claudette Colvin had finally had her record expunged. Those charges that had been put against her in the 1950s had stayed on the books and made her a felon for most of her life. Someone discovered this and realized the injustice and brought her back to Montgomery to have her record expunged. She was cleared of all charges. Doesn't make her life a picnic for what she did, but it is some redemption. And even better, along with her was the young Black lawyer that had represented her. And in addition to him getting the recognition he deserved for having represented her, they renamed a street in his honor. A street that had been named after a Civil War general. It felt right. That had happened 2 weeks before I was in Montgomery in 2021. And I heard this story from her cousin, who proudly told us what had happened and how proud she was of what Claudette had done that set the stage for Rosa Parks to make the change that needed to happen. I'm telling you all this because I want you to know how much power you have. I want you to know that your courage can be valuable. Your wisdom is valuable. So what does personal courage look like right now? Sometimes it's supporting the right political candidates. Sometimes it's writing a letter to your senator. Sometimes it's having the courage to walk up to somebody who is different and say hello. Courage comes in many forms. And the hero's journey does not always look like a mythic Greek story. You know, we've all seen those Hercules and Disney movies. That's what we often think the hero is. But the hero's journey can be much smaller and much more profound. So it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you have in front of you. I want you to explore your courage, even if you're shaking when you do it, and that's okay. The shaking will pass. I can assure you of that. You are enough. You have enough. And just like that medal that the Cowardly Lion was wearing, it's yours for the taking. You all deserve a medal for getting through life, for getting through parenting or marriage, or sometimes shitty jobs. Remember, it doesn't matter if you fail. You've already changed the world. So just do it. That's my message this week. Just talking about tapping into that energy source and enjoying it. So if you didn't listen to last week's episode yet, please go back and listen to it. There's a lot of good stuff there, and the energy is palpable. And write yourself a note to inspire yourself. Look for your courage every day. And sometimes courage is simply putting on your pants and walking out of the house. Sometimes that takes courage. And until next week, have a wonderful day, or a day full of wonder every single day. I look forward to talking to you again soon. But until then, please reach out to me on my Facebook page, The Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. And let's be bucket listers together. We're going to change this world for the better.
Like what you heard here today? Then we should be friends. I suggest you join my Facebook group. It's a good way to connect. We can have a conversation. Ask me questions, whatever you want to do. It is called The Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. That's Wonder-Full Bucket List Life. Be a bucket lister and join me on this adventure. Or you can go to my webpage, which is Wonder Wendy and Friends, join the mailing list, learn about the book I wrote, adventures that are coming up in the future, and other podcasts. I look forward to talking to you soon, and stay hydrated. Have a great day.